Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.
Hello and welcome to another super special episode of Sound of Money Season 3. It started, of course, last week, and now we have a very special guest joining me from Mumbai on this episode of the Sound of Money. In fact, now, as I call the Season 3, it's not just about the sound of money, but it goes beyond that, right? And today we're going to talk about the sound of the pharma industry. And joining me from Mumbai is a very, very special guest. We have Mr. Nikhil Masurkar, who is the Chief Executive Officer of ENTOD Pharmaceutical. Hi, Nikhil, and welcome to the Sound of Money.
Hello, Santosh. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Really looking forward to this very interesting discussion.
Sure. Thanks, Nikhil, for accepting the invite. So, Nikhil, the first question, ENTOD Pharmaceutical, since my childhood, I've heard this, of course, be in the Konkani community, the name, the brand. Tell us a little more deep dive a bit into the Masurkar legacy. Talk about the whole almost going to complete 50 years, and it's not a small thing. It's a big thing. So just take us and walk us through the journey of the Masurkar's legacy.
So, it's a privilege to be part of this legacy. It started with my great-grandmother in 1920s rural Karnataka. She lost her husband at a very young age. So she used to go to the forest, collect these herbs, bring them back and make medicines. Her homemade lotions, creams, and liquids were very popular. They became the talk of the village and the nearby villages. And she was, you could say, a single mother entrepreneur in 1920s Karnataka. So my grandfather, that is one of her sons, also wanted to do the same. He was inspired by her journey. He moved to Mumbai. He studied pharmacy and ended up becoming one of the first few registered pharmacists in India. And he went into the pharmaceutical field. He became a medical rep. He worked as a medical rep for most of his career, and then got promoted to marketing manager of his company. And then he became a pioneer in his field. He was a very well-known person in the pharma industry in those days, in the 50s and 60s. He launched Crocin in the market. He was called as India's Crocin man. He brought paracetamol into India. And thereafter, he retired early because he had a passion for specialty pharmaceuticals. So he set up ENTOD Pharmaceuticals in the late 70s, by setting up one of the first few sterile manufacturing plants in eye drops in India. And that's how the ENTOD, journey started.
Okay.
So yes, and then obviously my dad was part of the business, still is very actively, and then I joined the business about 14 years ago. So it's a privilege to be part of this beautiful journey, and it's in many ways still the start.
Interesting. So I know your dad, Mr. Kishore Masurkar. Your grandfather, may I know a little more about his legacy, his name? How did he really, and it's very interesting. You see, his mom, being his inspiration, moves on to a pharma industry, sees all what's happening in the house, maybe as a kid, moves on into a pharma industry, and then and he also actually moves on to an industry which is quite in demand nowadays. If you see, it's always been. But we saw with COVID, right, how important the industry is. Share a little bit about the legacy in the family.
So my grandfather was very passionate about certain areas of medicine which he wanted to specialize in.
Yeah.
So he looked at the five senses, the sense of hearing, touch, seeing, smell, and taste. And ENTOD was basically, formed and conceptualized around those five senses. And that's why we are ENTOD. So it's ENT, so it's ear, nose, throat, O for ophthalmology, and D for derma. Because he believed that in those days, and in many ways, even today, people take these five senses for granted.
Yeah.
So he wanted to develop medicines based on these five senses. So that's how the name ENTOD came about. In terms of the logo, my grandfather was a deeply spiritual person, and he always believed, and he told this to me and to all of us in the family right till the end, that he believes that science and spirituality are the two sides of the same coin. And he said that coin should be ENTOD. And therefore, even in our logo, we have the outer between ring, which symbolizes chemistry and science, and then the inner lotus, which symbolizes spirituality and divinity. And that's what we stand for, and that's what really Entod kind of goes by every day. So this is really how we came about.
Mm.
It's been an interesting journey for us as well. We've been involved in the specialty medicine field for a long time. We're a known brand in India since the late 70s. But I think we're moving into a different dimension now in the last since the last few years, definitely since the pandemic, where
Yeah.
we realized that we need to do something really different to really become a global power in our field.
Absolutely. The company's indigenous and very much groundbreaking innovation, especially in, as you mentioned, ophthalmology, ENT, and even derma related, dermatological kind of medicines. What are the typical groundbreaking medical research and also the medicines that have come from Endor, especially the recent, the pediatric eye drops? Maybe if you could share a lot more. It's a record of its sorts, right, in terms of medicine so far as ophthalmological medicine is concerned.
See, we've been very bold
Mm.
when it comes to innovation and R&D. We've taken some calculated risks, but each one of them has paid off. So we were the first ones to develop and commercialize an eye drop for the treatment of presbyopia
Mm.
in India.
Mm.
We were the first ones to commercialize a treatment for myopia, for childhood myopia, and
Yeah.
the recent DCGI approval we got was the first in the world. So we
Mm.
became a global innovator there. We were the first ones to develop a special eye injection used in cataract surgery. They're called as intracameral injections, which basically makes cataract surgery much easier with less pain and with better surgical outcomes.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in India as well. So this is something that we've done in the ophthalmic field. In the otological field also, we were the first ones to commercialize an eardrop for earwax removal, way back in the 80s. In the derma field, we've developed some really innovative products like a topical neurotoxin,
Mm.
kind of silicon-based sunscreens, the new age collagen serums,
Mm.
injection-free dermal fillers. So we are very kind of proactive when it comes to innovation. And one thing that I think your audience should know is that a lot of the innovations coming from the West, no doubt, are very good and they inspire us. But what India needs is not always what the US and those markets need.
Yeah.
We have a different demographics when it comes to certain medical conditions. Certain conditions are more prevalent in India than the US or other markets. So our research, our therapeutic gaps are not necessarily the same in terms of what is needed in the US or in some of the Western markets. And this is where we've been very successful. We've kind of realized where the gaps in India lie. We've engaged with doctors, very actively, and all our innovations have come from having meaningful discussions with doctors and trying to see where the therapeutic gaps are, and then kind of commercializing it subsequently.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, right? The role of India and the pharma industry, it's been there. It's like leader in more than one way. So in terms of the leadership perspective, especially Indian pharmaceutical world, how can the leadership especially can lead the global south and the emerging markets?
So, I mean, as a company, our main market is India. It's always nation first.
Yeah.
Then it's the countries of the global south. I think we have a lot of in common with the
Mm.
countries of the global south. Like, for example, if you look at a country like India, we
Mm.
have a big myopia problem.
Yeah.
A lot of the global south countries, including those of Southeast Asia, also have a myopia problem.
Mm.
Myopia is not as prevalent, say, in the US or in Europe, for example.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of commonality when it comes to certain medical conditions and how prevalent they are.
Yeah.
I think if those innovations come from a country like India, I think there is a lot of opportunity for leadership.
Yeah.
We have, been a leader in ophthalmology in the global south. We managed to introduce new molecules into a lot of these emerging markets where
Hmm.
traditional, US or Western companies haven't quite been able to penetrate because of, lack of affordability. And I think our global competitiveness can also be enhanced because, cost effectiveness is at the heart of what we do. And I'm not just talking about cost effectiveness in terms of the end user price. I'm talking about cost effectiveness of R&D as well. We could develop something at probably one-tenth the cost of what it would cost back in the US. And I think this is where our expertise lies. And this is where we could exert global leadership, particularly in the global south.
Yeah, in fact, in terms of the company itself, ENTOD, right? How is ENTOD very specifically leading this industry? More so from a volume-driven sector to a value-driven research ecosystem, especially given that you guys are into the MSME space, and that's quite an emerging one.
Yeah, so India is moving from a volume-driven sector to a more value-driven research ecosystem. Now, for that to happen, companies in the MSME space need to engage in more research so they could come out with more kind of high-value research products. So promoting R&D and innovation in the MSME sector becomes very, very crucial. So what ENTOD is trying to do is to not just engage in research and increase our revenue when it comes to the more high value products, which we have done successfully in the last 10 years, but also motivate the others as well, and give them case histories,
Hmm.
to show that, well, for example, I'll just give you one example is the product that we developed and commercialized in 2016 was one of the first in the world for myopia. And today it's our number one product value-wise
Hmm.
and unit-wise as well.
And
So we managed to basically show that we can make commercial successes of the products in which we invest R&D.
hmm.
We've had the same thing with the other products as well. So almost every new DCGI product that we have launched in the market after having spent, for R&D, we've made them into commercial successes and we've got a good return on investment for those. And that is what we want to tell everyone else, that actually research isn't some namesake thing where you do it on the side and it'll never kind of generate any revenue. We have a situation with in ENTOD where almost 20% of our sale has come from research and innovation driven products. And I think that's the way forward.
That's very interesting, actually, Nikhil. And I'm very keen to know your views on how science, spirituality, excellence, and more importantly, accessibility, all have come together to improve the health and the wellness of the people. Because you guys are into a space, which eventually is all about health and wellness, right? So how do all this, and India, it can't be a better place than India where spirituality, research, all can come together. Maybe and I'm sure your personal experiences probably, so maybe you could share a little more on that.
So I think, when you look at the industry, the way my grandfather looked at it was not just about physical health. When you talk about health, you have, the physical, or should I say medical health, you have emotional health, you have spiritual health. I think a pharma company needs to look at all those aspects of health, not just the physical aspects of it. And that's why spirituality plays an important role in what we're trying to achieve. And ENTOR trying to enhance the five senses,
Yeah.
I think is probably the first way to improve, the emotional, psychological, and possibly the spiritual health of our people. So
Mm.
that's where it kind of starts. So the long-term goal is to improve the wellness of the people, and that's why it's not just about developing and selling medicines. It's to also improve and have a positive impact on the overall wellness of the people as well. So that goes into the area of health awareness.
Yeah.
Like we do a lot of health promotional campaigns in the media, on the radio, on TV. We're
Yeah.
continuously and actively involved in promoting good health and wellness. And I think that's the duty of care we have towards our people. And this model is very different to what probably happens in the West. So the Western kind of style of, or should I say, the system of pharmaceuticals doesn't quite extend to the spiritual domain. But in India, with our cultural heritage, we could have, a perfect blend between science and spirituality and really kind of use it, as an amalgamation towards, kind of improving the health of our people. So this is where I think science and spirituality come together. I mean, we look at it as one and the same, and I think it's the spiritual aspect that motivates us to do what we're doing today.
Absolutely. In fact, when it comes to the Indian pharma industry, and if you correlate it, it very much resonates in terms of the government's Viksit Bharat initiative, right? And it's a $450 billion industry when it comes to pharma. How do you think the pharma industry can scale up a lot more than what it is today, especially given the vision of the government, and a very clear-cut vision that has been spelled out by the Modi government in terms of the Viksit Bharat agenda? Where do you see that panning out?
So let me just give you some numbers. So, I mean, India is, the third largest pharma market by volume,
Yeah.
14th largest in terms of value.
Mm.
Last year, I think we did around $61 billion. That's the whole industry. 56% of that is export, 44% is domestic.
Yeah.
Almost 50% of generic medicines in the US come from India. I think the UK gets around 25% of its generic medicines from India. Africa gets almost 50% of its medicines from India. So it's a huge market. Also, I think 20% of overall generics in the world come from India.
Yeah.
But I think where India can really make a shift is to kind of move from the low cost products to the more high value product. Right now, I think it's a very small proportion of products. I think not more than 10% of our medicines are innovative medicines. But we need to increase that. And by 2047, if we need to reach, a value of, say, $450 billion, number one, as I said earlier on, the MSME needs to, innovate. And secondly, we need to get at least 35%, if not 40% of our revenues coming from high value exports.
Yeah.
And I think the way that should be done is through investing in R&D, and the government has done really well to have schemes encouraging companies like ours to invest in innovation, and many others as well. So I think that's the way forward, and I think that's the change that we'll see. I was speaking to a patent attorney a few days ago, and surprisingly, he told me that the maximum number of patents filed in the last 3 years in the pharma industry have been from Indian-born pharma companies, and not the foreign MNCs. And that's a sea change. And that tells you that genuine innovation and research is currently happening. I mean, I know it's happening in cardiology. It's happening in diabetology. It's happening in cancer. And we're doing it in the ophthalmology segment as well. So there's a whole mindset change that's happening. Maybe the pandemic woke us up.
Yeah.
We realized that we kind of we can't just be self-reliant or Atmanirbhar Bharat when it comes to manufacturing. We also need to be Atmanirbhar Bharat when it comes to R&D, when it comes to API development and manufacturing as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, no pharmaceutical related, industry related, discussions or conversations can ever conclude without talking about the Trump tariffs, right? Is he troubling you too, guys? What's been the talk show all around, the town about in the pharma world about the Trump tariffs? In fact, do you see a huge impact of the tariffs on the Indian health industry, pharma industry?
Well, if you talk about, my own experience or, with regards to ENTOD Pharmaceuticals, that, I mean, it doesn't affect us in any way because we've always had a more India-centric approach rather than a US-centric approach.
Yeah.
Our international business has been more, the global South, Southeast Asia, Latin America. more, I would say, the underprivileged or semi-privileged markets. So, a privileged market like the US has never been attractive for us. That's not been our goal or part of our mission, if I could say that. So it doesn't affect us. Will it affect the industry? Maybe in the short term, there could be a few disruptions. But I think in the long term, I think what the US will realize is that they get a really good deal from the US, from India. You have a very good infrastructure in India when it comes to pharmaceutical manufacturing, which I don't think you can replicate even in the US. India has the highest number of US FDA approved plants in the world. I think there's almost 650 of them. So we have it all, and we give them a good deal as well. So perhaps some disruptions short term, but in the long term, I think it'll be a win-win. And actually, I think the US and India can work collaboratively, even in the R&D area as well, where India could be a great manufacturing partner for the US. And I think together, I think we could do wonders.
Wonderful. So what's in a day of Nikhil Masurkar? Otherwise, when you're not busy in meetings, traveling, catching up with your teams, how is a day off for Nikhil?
Yeah, I'm very health conscious. So I do a lot of jogging. I do yoga. I also spend time kind of reading on current affairs and what's happening in the world. I have a very strong interest in geopolitics as well. I keep myself busy in various ways. I'm quite deeply spiritual as well. I do a lot of meditation, and I have certain spiritual practices that, I don't want to go into detail right now, but, I do practice those as well. So not, just the basics. I don't really get too much time off. My world is my work. That's my karma. And if I can get some time off, I just try and calm myself down, try and calm my mind down a bit, so that I'm ready for the next day.
Wonderful. Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Especially when you say your work is all about karma, and you find that, that important piece of time to meditate and a little bit of spirituality, which just balances your life, I'm sure. Nikhil Masurkar, Chief Executive Officer of ENTOD Pharma, thank you very much for being on my podcast, The Sound of Money.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, with that, we come to the end of this episode of The Sound of Money. We'll be back with another episode with another wonderful guest coming up. But for now, from me, Santosh Sirur, and my guest, Nikhil Masurkar, thank you so much for being with on The Sound of Money. Bye-bye and take care.
The Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.